everybody. Welcome to the Underwater Photography Show. As always, I am Matthew Sullivan.
And I'm Alex Mustard.
And today, Alex, you just returned from Raja Ampat, and you were shooting a pretty cool new optic from Nauticam. So let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a wonderful trip, as Raja Ampat always is. It's such a diverse destination. I often joke that there's a T-shirt that says, diving is life, everything else is a surface interval. And for me, diving in Raja Ampat is life, and all other diving is a surface interval waiting for the next dive trip to Raja Ampat, because it's so wonderful there. So it's a fantastic destination. It never fails to deliver. We had a fantastic trip, real diversity of diving available from the liverboard, with some incredible highlights. Often at this time of year, the reefs in Raja Ampat are just packed with bait fish and all that action, and predators coming in and mulling the bait fish. And so we enjoyed all of that. But I enjoyed it especially because I was shooting it with this beast. And this is Nauticam's production version of the FCP. I'll just hold it a bit further back so you can see the size of it. It's a relatively, I guess that front dome is a 140 size dome, something like that. It looks quite very similar to the 140 dome. I don't know if it is a straight concentric dome or it's actually a lens, that front element. But it's a nice small item. It's not too heavy. I reckon it's about 3 kilos or so. So about 6 pounds. So it's not light. It's a great big chunk of glass, but it's not killer heavy. And it's not too big. I actually didn't take it in its travel case. I took it like this, obviously with the port cover on and the back cover on, wrapped it in bubble wrap and put it in my hard case. So it was relatively easy to travel with. The FCP, for those that don't know about it, and I'm excited to talk about it because I shot the prototype lens through last year, but this was my first trip trying the real production version. And it has evolved quite a bit from the prototype, as you might expect. But the FCP's party trick is that it's a fisheye converter port. That's what the FCP stands for. And it turns your standard lens, in the case of a 28mm focal length lens on full frame, into a fisheye. And then if that 28mm is part of a zoom lens, you can then zoom in from that point. So you end up with a fisheye zoom, but with a water corrected front element. So it gives superior image quality to a dome port. And it gives you a bigger zoom range. With something like a 2860, you've got about twice the zoom range of kind of a classic fisheye zoom on a crop sensor like a 10-17. So you really can zoom in a long way. And you're doing that on a, all singing, all dancing, full frame, mirrorless camera, 50 megapixel camera. So you've got tremendous image quality and tremendous flexibility. And the upshot of that really is that as a photographer, I went to Raja Ampat. I think I did 26 dives on my trip. And for well over 20 of them, this was on my camera. And it absolutely wasn't the only lens I took. It just was always the right lens to dive with. Because if it was a manta focused dive, the full fisheye is often a bit wide for that. But with this, I knew I could zoom in and cover it. If it was a scenery focused dive, I'd put this on. And then if we bumped into a wobbegong, I could zoom it in, or we bumped into a school of fish or bumped into a turtle, I could zoom it in. Actually, on one dive, one of the dive guides found a nice leaf fish. It was about this size. Mm-hmm. And with this, I could shoot it full frame. It just covers everything so well. And it just, particularly in a destination like Raja Ampat, it was the place to go. The two other things that have changed since the prototype version, and when I've talked about the FCP before, is the first is the price, and the FCP is more expensive than I was expecting, and we should probably dive into that a little bit. But perhaps more interestingly is the fact that Nauticam realized that they could make the FCP more usable than the prototype. And it's not something that I considered. But on the FCP, it's designed to be used with a sort of a 28-60, 28-70, 28-50 mil zoom lens. But you can also use it with a 14mm zoom lens. And on the 14mm, it's a circular fisheye. And when you're using it as a circular fisheye, what you do is you can take the dome shades off. And one of the things I've never liked about circular fisheyes is you have to dive with no dome shades on, and you're risking scratching your dome, particularly in a rocky environment. And what's great about this is that the the dome shade on this just comes on and off so easily underwater. You just press this button here, rotate it, and off it comes. So, and then you can just slide that over your arm while you shoot. And then when you don't want to do circular fisheye anymore, on this goes back on again. And again, it's very, very, very easy with one hand. Just push it on, click it into place, and you're ready to shoot again. And why I find that really interesting is I'm not very interested in shooting circular fisheyes very much. But if you shoot this lens with a 14 to something zoom, that then becomes really exciting. And both Nikon Z and Canon R both make really nice 14 to 30 mil in terms of Nikon and 14 to 35 mil zooms for those cameras. So if you're a Canon R user, for example, you can shoot the FCP with a 24 to 50, using it from 28 to 50 and have it as a full fisheye to something that zooms in a lot tighter. And it's a really usable lens. And but you can also use it with your 14 to 35. And at 14 mil, it gives you a circular fisheye. You zoom it in then to 28 mil, and you've got a normal standard full frame fisheye from corner to corner fisheye is your main workhorse lens. And then when you bump into that school of fish, that big animal that you need to zoom in a little bit closer for, you've got then from 28 to 35 mil of zoom in to be able to tighten that angle up. And that becomes a really powerful lens. So although this bad boy is expensive, I think particularly on those systems, the fact that you can use it with two lenses in really quite a different way is really interesting. And also, I think, for example, if you travel with, say, you're a Nikon Z shooter and you travel with a 14 to 30 mil, you can use that 14 to 30 mil with your standard dome, and you use it as a pure rectilinear lens, which is like 120 degrees zoomed into a little bit. You can then put it behind this and have it as 180 the same lens as a 180 degree circular fisheye, 180 degree corner to corner full frame fisheye, and then have a bit of zoom in as well to cover bigger animals. And I think that is really exciting and something that was new to me with this lens, being able to use it in those two ways. And I found that really, really interesting. In terms of its underwater, it's obviously got a buoyancy collar on. It's not floaty like a dome port, but it's nice and neutral in the water. I have to say, I think because they don't float, I'd probably like them to be a little bit more floaty, so it feels a little bit more like a dome port. I don't know what it is, but I tend to find that when I shoot a dome port, I shoot lots of verticals. And when I shoot with this or a more sinky wide angle lens, I tend to shoot more horizontals, I guess, because you feel almost like you want to hold the housing with both hands. So, I'd like it a little bit more buoyancy on it. But apart from that, I really don't have anything negative to say. The image quality it delivers and the flexibility is really its selling point. And it's absolutely fantastic. I don't know if you can see me through it. Have some fun. There we go. I don't know if you've got any other questions, but I wanted to dive a little bit into price.
We can do that. And then I was also going to ask a bit more about the image quality, because for the price and for, Nauticam's known for their water contact optics. So it's something worth discussing, I think, is how it stacks up against some of the other ones.
And I think that's partly part of why it is expensive, is not only is there a big chunk of glass in here, but there are two aspherical elements in there, which are very expensive to make. There's actually a limited production of them. And the prototype didn't have those aspherical elements, but Nauticam thought they were really important to deliver the ultimate in image quality. And I think that's a major reason why it ended up particularly expensive. Not only are those elements very expensive to make, and they're the same elements that you get in, same type of elements you get in big telephoto long lenses for land shooting. And it's perhaps no surprise that this is the same sort of price as some of those big telephoto land lenses, is that those are the few people who want these big pieces of optical glass. And there is a limited supply in the world of them. And I know that, Nauticam with the WACP-1, they struggled to have enough glass to be able to make all the WACP-1s that to supply the order. And the reality is this is a far more versatile piece of kit than a WACP-1. And I just, I've been taking this one. I didn't lend this one to anyone, but I took the prototype on my workshop as well. And the prototype did every single dive of the trip. someone was borrowing it every single dive, and many people were borrowing it for multiple times because it's just so nice to shoot. It's just what you want. And actually, someone scratched it as well. I should say. It's just I don't. Everyone on the trip had done like probably 10 or more trips with me, but yeah, someone put a little scratch in the front of the prototype FCP, which I'll have to admit to Nauticam at some point. But it's destined for the Nauticam Museum, so I don't think they'll mind a scratch from it getting a hard life out in the field. But there's no denying how usable and how desirable it is in terms of a range that you can shoot on a dive. To get into your question about the image quality, I would say that it's not as much of a wow image quality as the WACP-1. I think if you go from shooting, say, a rectilinear behind a dome port to the WACP-1, almost everyone I know who's bought a WACP-1 has been like, oh, wow, it's my favorite lens. I love it. I love the image quality. It delivers on the image quality, but not by as big a margin over a standard fisheye. And I think that's partly because the standard fisheye behind a dome is generally very good. And I think also that this is probably slightly less good than a WACP-1. It's probably a little bit more similar in terms of image quality to a WACP-C or that sort of thing. So it's still, better than a dome port, but not by as big a margin as the very best of the Nauticam optics. But it's designed for flexibility, and one of the things I love about it is that it's not too big. I'm sure that if Nauticam made it half as big again, it would be better on image quality than the WACP-1, but it would also then cost an extra zero on the end probably,
yeah.
and certainly it would weigh a lot more as well. So it's always
trade-offs to everything.
Yeah. I think the price as well perhaps also has something to do with that supply and demand aspect, in that I think if this was undercutting the WACP-1, Nauticam would probably have 250 orders already. And I can't believe they can make anything like that number per year, just because of the availability of the raw materials of the big pieces of optical glass. And I suspect that maybe their price is also trying to manage the demand, because the moment you try it is the moment you don't want it off your camera, because it's what you want. And I think if it's a money no object, what you want to go diving with, what you want to go shooting with, it's generally this, because it's got excellent optics and ridiculous flexibility in a package that really isn't. I know I'm holding it forward, but if I hold it back against my chest, it's really not that big. And I think that makes it a really exciting product. It's got my name on this one. I stuck my name on it. So Nauticam are going to have to prize this out of my hands. I mean, and I guess in terms of, it's not really a review. It's more about sharing the experience. But yeah, from that sort of full disclosure point of view, this lens belongs to Nauticam. It's been loaned to me for a while, and I'll return it to Nauticam at some point in the future. In their mind, I'm sure they're expecting it sooner. And in my mind, I'm definitely thinking later. But we'll see how long. I'll wait till the emails get really rude, and then I'll send it back.
There you go. All right. Well, we can hint at a future episode that at some point we will discuss the FCP versus the WACP-1, and in terms of, does the FCP make the WACP redundant? But we'll save that for another time. So if there's nothing else, Alex, I think that's a good place to wrap this one up.
Yeah, no, I really love shooting it, as you can probably tell. And yeah, I'm really excited to get it back out there in the field.
Right on. Well, we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.